All right, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. We've got Anthony Trucks in the house who agreed to sit down and do this interview with me. I'm freaking blessed. I'm pumped out of my mind. And so I'm going to give him a quick intro here. And if you guys can see the whiteboard, for those of you who will be watching on YouTube, Anthony is a former NFL player, American Ninja Warrior. He's a coach, consultant, gym owner, author and speaker, and founder of Trust Your Hustle. He's also a Christian, husband, and father of three wonderful children. I'm just going to go down the line here, Anthony. First, thanks for being here. And I've got 29 subscribers on my YouTube channel to date, so this is
Awesome.
kind of a big deal.
There you go, man. Well, I'm very welcome. Thank you for having me, man. I'm always open to helping anybody anyway. And I think, honestly, at the same point, like you're helping people too, whether it's 29 or one, it doesn't matter. You're doing something. So I'm always like, I love that part of the world and people doing what you're doing.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. And I've been following you for a while here, and your content. I mean, there's just so much great stuff about your content. And guys, I'll leave links if you want to if you're interested in following Anthony. I'll leave all that information at the end of this interview. But yeah, let's get started. Can you tell us a little bit about why you got into producing content? Like, talk a little bit about, I guess, your childhood, if that's
Yeah.
and go into when you first fell in love with football. And
Yeah.
yeah, sweet.
Yeah, man. The whole rundown. I had a weird childhood. I was given away at 3 years old into foster cares, which it's not really a great way to start your life, to be honest. And so for the first years of my life, I dealt with a lot of different trials and tribulations and difficult stuff that was not in my control, which is where a lot of the world happens. Is a lot of it's out of our control. And so for that, chunk of time in my life, which was 3 to 6, I dealt with a lot of different headaches. And then at 6 years old, I got put into a home, which is my family now. The unique thing is I'm adopted by an all-white family. And so for about 8 more years after that, I was actually about 8, I was still in the system. And I was adopted at 14. But for those 8 years, I saw a lot of ups and downs and a lot of things that I figured. I wasn't allowed to play sports. I couldn't find a place where I felt centered because I wasn't really a kid in this home. I wasn't adopted yet. And my real mom, she was floating around. So I felt like a lot of instability in life. And I think we all get to that point where we have these levels of feeling like we're less than, we're not good enough, we're unstable, completely oblivious of how to handle these situations that we've been forced into. Then at 14 years old, I happened upon this situation where I was finally adopted. It took me getting up in court and looking my real mom in her eyes and telling her I didn't want her to be my mom anymore, which is a tough thing at 14 years old to do. But it was that kind of first moment that was a catalyst to the next stages of the rest of my life, to be honest. And so I now was free in some senses, free in a sense of being able to try new things in life because my real mom would never let me. And then I was also free in a chance, like knowing that the place that I went to bed last night is the place that I'm going to go to bed tomorrow. Like that was a unique thought to have at 14 years old. Like it was weird. And so I had this other inkling, that I want to try this new thing, which was sports. And so I wanted to try football. So I got to go out and run around and hit people and not get in trouble for it, which was an awesome feeling. So I ventured in this new world. And like a lot of us, I tried this thing that I loved, but the problem was I wasn't very good at it. Like there's always this area of internal questioning of like, I really want to try this thing, but I'm not succeeding like I see everybody else succeeding. So should I keep doing it? Should I hang it up? Should I give up? Like, it's just these thoughts, and it becomes a fight that all of a sudden inside you're like, I don't want to feel like this right now. Like, I want everything to be great. So I just want to stop doing this. And it happened for me. I was really bad at football. A year later, I got into this situation where I was now a freshman in high school. I'd never been around people that looked like me. So I didn't have like a real true place to fit, but the sports area, the sports arenas where everybody can come and gel. But out there, it wasn't very good. And then, I kind of I would try it again. So I went out, tried it again, and had one great game, phenomenal first game, like 3 touchdowns as a wide receiver. Next game, dropped 3 touchdowns, and I felt horrible, right? So I packed it up. I was like, I'm done with this. My real mom was out of the picture. My adoptive mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, so she's sick, and my dad and everybody's focusing on her. My older brother went off to the military, and I'm pretty much having this conversation in my head of like, Aunt, dude, you're just a foster kid. You're not really supposed to do well. And we have these conversations. We tell ourselves these running stories that help us feel justified for why we're making bad decisions. And this was my story was, well, you're just a foster kid. You're not supposed to do very well. And I remember I was sitting in this room as an actual teacher's classroom, and it was the back of this portable, and it was English class, Mr. Howe's class. And I was sleeping through class, but I had a bag of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, had this black park I'd put over my head, and I would pass out. I'd be done, right? I was flunking classes, wasn't really showing up. And then I remember that there's these two girls sitting next to me, and they're in this sofa, like this love seat, and they're having a conversation, and they don't know I'm listening really. And the conversation has this point which hits, and it was really simple, 11 words, basic. And the statement is, well, the reason I'm so bad is because I'm in foster care. And it's really a simple statement. Like when I hear it, I'm like, it's not that powerful, right? But for me, it was powerful because it was the first time I heard my excuse for why I was going to do bad in life spoken out loud.
Gotcha.
And rarely do we have that happen, this running conversation. You hear it, and it's like, wow, that's real. And then I had to sit back and realize, like, that sounds horrible. Like if a lot of us just spoke our excuses out loud, we'd like that really is a dumb excuse. Like we'd hear it and be like, that's stupid, you know? And this was my moment of like, this is a really bad reason as to why 30 years, 40 years from now, I'll be a bad dad, a criminal. Like if you look at any prison in America, 75% of the inmates are former foster kids. Over 51% of people who are homeless are former foster kids. 1% of us will ever graduate college. So statistically, man, we're not set up successfully. And I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, yeah, you're just a foster kid. Nobody cares about you. What are you supposed to do? Like, how are you supposed to be great? Right. The conversation we run in our heads. And so I was like, no, I'm gonna be great, man. Like I did this really weird choice at like 15 years old.
That choice at that age.
Yeah, it was, I got fed up. I think that's it really, I mean, at this time in my life, since I can remember literally 3 years old back, it's always just sucked. And I was just tired of it sucking. I think I always had a realization when football was like the reason I felt bad wasn't because I did bad. It was because other teammates, everybody else was saying I was bad. You were horrible. And I had let the world depict how I felt. I'd let my mom give me away and depict my feelings. I'd let these situations that I couldn't really control fully depict how I felt. And I was tired of having control of my emotions in someone else's hands. Mm. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna choose to be great. And what I did know is if I do nothing, greatness won't come to me. I knew that. Like I just knew. I was like, if I do nothing, I'm not going to trip and fall into an amazing life or something great. It's like you got to work for it. The problem is, a lot of us want to dip our toe in to see if it's going to be okay before we dive in. And you could do that in a swimming pool. Like in a swimming pool, you could, it's warm, I'm going to hop in the water. But in success in life, like you're doing, you got to dive in. If you don't dive in, you don't get any of the results. So for me, I realized we have to put in that game-winning work before we know we're going to win the game. That's it. Like if you try to go in with practice level work, you're never going to win the game. Like, so I was like, I got to dig in. And so I started doing everything I can at the time to be great. I would run routes every day. I would catch 500 footballs a day. I would lift every weight I could. Like I do track practice, lifting weights. People made fun of me later in life. People made fun of me looking back and reminiscing about those moments, saying, man, I remember Trucks. I would be at parties. He'd be out there eating protein shakes and lifting weights. And I'm like, yeah, bro. And that's why I got a chance to play in the NFL and open a gym and be on TV. But it was this weird thing of you go cycle it back, that all of my drive started this simple moment of making a decision. I was going to be great and putting in work before I knew I'd be successful. And then oddly, people think it's like magic. It worked out. Like, no, it just did what's supposed to happen. Like you work and you get a result, right? So I was blessed to get a chance to play in college on a scholarship, play in the NFL, come home, open a gym. I've now been able to write books, travel the world, speak all over the country and all over the world, do a whole bunch of weird, off-the-wall cool stuff, man. And that's been kind of my journey as to now.
What would you say? You probably have so many memorable moments, but could you give me your top memorable moment from high school, mm-hmm. college, and the pros?
Yeah. My top memorable moment in high school, what's an odd one? I don't know if it's super odd, but it was just one that was tied to, like, I guess, my future. And I remember my senior year of high school, I had, gone through a lot of headaches and I had all these situations that had gone in my relationship. I'm now married to my high school sweetheart. We'd had a lot of craziness. Her family dealt with some stuff. I had, my mom was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I'd gone through a lot of stuff to get myself back, like, and eligible for sports in the first place. Cause I pretty much checked out for a while. And I remember there was this little time capsule our school always puts under the ground. And on the time capsule, you put something in. And I had, for some odd reason, this moment in high school where my mom, my adoptive mom, she had my MS, and she was wheelchair bound. She couldn't come to a lot of football games, and she'd go to as many as she could. Home games were easier. But we had a game that was away. It was at Cal High, and it was just, regular high school play. But she couldn't attend. And I remember in that game, I bawled. I had 3 touchdowns. And every time I scored a touchdown, I put my hand in the air and I would do this to let my mom know, like, I'm thinking of you, but also like pointing to God. But me and my mom, we knew this was to her for the most part. And so it was this game where I'm like, man, I scored 3 touchdowns and mom didn't see any of these. And it sucked. This was a Friday night. Saturday morning, the newspaper opens up and it's the very top half, the entire page is a picture of me doing this. And I was like, wow. And then that was a picture that I was like, this is weird. Like God's my way. God's working some odd, mysterious way to like let her see that. And in the time capsule, I wrote on there, I'm going pro, baby, in a silver pen. And I wrote it and I put it underneath there. And then sure enough, 4.5 years later, I went pro, which was that in and of itself is even a tougher one. But that's what I wrote. My wife was there when I wrote it. So she saw it. So like she has someone to vouch for it. It was actually on there. So that was a unique tie of moments.
That's awesome. That's freaking sweet. What sticks out in college? So you played at Oregon for people who don't know. So what's one of the best memories that sticks out?
College, man. I got a couple. I think there's 2 and they tie together in some way. So for me, it's always been this thing in the back of my head is I want to be able to do better for another life than was done for me. I want to make sure I'm present as a father. I got 3 kids that are upstairs right now that I love to death, right? And so my first one was an accident. He happened at 19 years old in college. And I remember getting that phone call of my wife. She's like, hey, I'm pregnant. And she was freaking out. And I was like, yeah. like, how are we going to do this? I'm like, I mean, I was seriously excited. You could ask this. I've never been to the point where I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? Like in my head, I was like, well, I got the drive, the resources. Like we have, we're both in college and granted away from our families. My wife's family was like, all you got to do is don't go up there and get pregnant. So she did. But we had a great college, just situation experience with our son. And I wouldn't change a minute of it. But anyways, like that was one of my great moments was having my son. And then another one was kind of that same tie as it was this thing where I never knew who my real dad was. All my life, my real mom had told me his name is Daniel Patrick O'Byrne. My real mom's white, and then O'Byrne's an Irish name. So if they're both white, then I'm an accident. So I don't know, or God's joke. So I was like, that's got to be off. And my real mom's, she's loopy. My grandma's a little bit loopy too, but not as loopy. So after a while, she had somehow connected with me. I guess they live about 2 hours north of me in Oregon in a place called St. Helens, or Mount St. Helens. And so out of a weird conversation, I ended up getting my real dad's last name, which is Asaibovo. And it was a unique situation of like, wow, let's look him up. And so we look him up. There's 5 in the country. And there's a guy named Anthony, Cindy, Tane, Tosan, and one other person I can't think of. But they're the only ones that have the last name. So we find the phone number, give them a ring, and it's like, hey, my name's Anthony. I grew up in this area, and I think I might be your son. And it's just kind of this weird conversation. It's a really deep Nigerian accent. He goes, hello, this is Anthony. Like I have, just like that's how he speaks. And he's like, yeah. He says, I knew a woman named Marie, which was my real mom's name, and she lived in the city of Concord. And I was like, oh, I was born in Martinez, and Martinez and Concord are like this. Okay. And now he lived and married to Georgia across the country. And so wrapping the story up, my first college start took place. I went to college, and I was I never redshirted. So I played my first year, wasn't very good, kind of got on special teams, did well. The next year I had to compete against a starter, a 5-year senior for a starting job. So he's his 5th year. It's my 2nd year. And I'm competing against him for a starting job. And I take his starting job. And I beat him out. And so my very first college start is at Mississippi State on national television. And I get a game ball. And it just so happens Marietta, Georgia is 4 hours east. So my family drives over. I get to meet my dad the exact same day that I get to start national television game ball. So it was a cool day, man.
Oh my God. That's unbelievable, man. That's freaking, so that must've been a wild experience to meet him for the first time, especially on that day of all days.
Yeah, it was nuts, man.
How about a memorable moment in the pros?
The pros. Yeah, it must be a real moment, man. So I had this dog tag of my son. And at the time, you go to the mall, and like a little laser etched dog tag has a picture on it. And I read this picture, had my son on it. And for me now, I've got a son, I've got a wife, I'm away from them. And I don't like being away. It ties it back to my emotions of being a kid and being, separate and pulled away. And we all have these attachment pieces sometimes. People get homesick, right? And so my attachment piece was like, I don't like moving. I don't like being away from the home. Like it's not a thing that I enjoy doing too much. And so now I'm away from the family. I'm in Tampa Bay with the Buccaneers. I'm in training camp in Orlando, Florida. And the team in the NFL, people realize like the NFL is not a big chummy, like, hey, come hang out. It's like, you're about to try to take my job. I don't want that to happen. I hate your guts. And now let's battle it out, right? That's how the league is. And so I go in and I'm across the country away from the family. I got zero supporters on my side. It's hot because it's Orlando, Florida in July and August. It's hot. The coaches yell at you all day. Like, it's the most, like, I don't know, just soul defeating experience you can imagine in some aspects. Maybe not the most, but just how I experienced at the time. And I've been through a lot, and this still sucked. And I remember at this moment, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I literally made a decision. I was like, I'm coming home. I'm quitting football. And I called my wife. I'm like, I'm coming home. I called my coach in college, Ace, my scholarship, better finish school. I'm coming home. I called my agent. I can't do this. I'm coming home. And they're all like, Ant, you are crazy. What are you doing? I'm like, I got to do it. And I'm like, whatever, if you can't do it, I guess you got to come home. So I remember I'm walking downstairs and it's still spinning in my head. I get about 20 feet from the doorway where all the coaches are meeting. I can see them. I'm about to walk in and say, hey guys, I'm quitting the NFL. That's what I'm about to say. And I stopped. I don't know why I stopped. I just stopped. And I was like, gosh, just really I don't know. And then this guy walks up, his name's Eric Vance. And Eric Vance is a player personnel guy. His job is to be like the support for the players. Like, he's just like our buddy, And so he's like, hey, what are you doing, man? And he's like, I got to go home, man. He goes, let's go sit down. So he takes me outside. We sit in this little outdoor balcony. It's called Celebration, Florida. It's like Disney's little city outside of the city.
Oh, nice.
And we sit there and he's just talking. He's like, tell me your story, man. What's going on? Like, well, who are you? So I break down a lot of what I just broke down to you. And he's like, simple questions. What would your son think, 10 years from now if he knew his dad quit playing football? I was like, man. Yeah, I was like, dude, I don't know if ever going to have that conversation because we're about to be put in that track right now. If you make this decision, he's like, look, just stick it out. He's like, there's going to be harder things you encounter in life. This doesn't sound like it's the kind of person you are. He says, just, you've been through too much. You're here. He's like, you're one of the few human beings that get here. Just stick it out, dude. So I stuck it out. And the odd thing was, I packed it back up, went back up. I ended up making it to the very final cuts, like the last 7 people to go. But the very next day, I show up to training camp, and I don't want to be there. And the groundskeepers apparently had found my dog tag. It was hanging on my locker and a picture of my son. And I was like, wow, of all the things that are like a side, it was like this moment of like, yeah, if I'd have left, I never would have found it. And they said we had a conversation just the night before about like my son, what would he think? And there's a dog tag, my son's picture on it. It was pretty crazy, but that was one unique moment for me for the NFL.
That must have brought chills through you. It just brought chills to me, so I can't imagine what it felt like for you. Wow. So yeah, no, this is all good stuff. So after the NFL, life after the NFL,
mm-hmm.
what was that like mentally? That switch where you're like, okay, I gave it a shot. I did it. I can say I did it and put it on my resume and more so, like with your son. And now he knows that his dad played in the NFL. After that, what was that mental switch like?
It's tough. Transitioning is the hardest thing for us as humans. We get put into a place of homeostasis, which is what we get used to, our normalcy, and we don't like breaking that. And so for me, I had this situation where it's like, I've done something for the last 13, 14 years. I don't know anything else. Who am I without this thing? Right? It says we have these identity crises, and these same things happen with people in the military. It's like, who in the world am I without X? And so for me, I had this kind of system where I had in my head to figure out, like, how do I become still a successful guy doing something that I've never been part of, which is the work world. Like, you got to join the rat race, so to speak. And I don't know how to do that. So I was like, yeah, I got a job at 24 Hour Fitness, and I come back and I'm like, yeah, at the same time as I'm getting this job, I'm thinking I'm gonna stay in shape and making a phone call, right? I bought a house and I got everything here, but I still got to I could get a call back, right? And so I come to find out eventually that I tore my shoulder. In an NFL, it's difficult because if you tear your shoulder as a linebacker, they really don't want you back. Like, it's just like, bad shoulder. We're getting one of these young buck coming up, right? So I got to figure out how to do this. And I remember the moment that I made a decision was I got a couple workouts, and one of the workouts, they offered me a contract, but it was like a modified one where if I get hurt again, they don't cover my shoulder. So I remember like talking to my agent. He's like, this is pretty much what's going to happen. He says, and I don't recommend you do this because that means that if something happens, you're screwed. You could lose your arm and you could move it and you'd have nobody to cover it. So I remember like sitting in a back room of my gym because I'd opened a gym. Actually, I fast forwarded to that, but I'd opened a gym because I was tired of having a job that I didn't have control over. Although I pretty much owned a job now, whole different conversation, different world. But I remember when I finally like was like, it's done, and I cried, and it wasn't like it's probably an ugly cry, but I was like, it was a release of like this pain of like having a realization of this chapter of my life is legitimately done, and I can't go back to that safety net. I have to start again, and that I think is